Namaskar and good afternoon. I, Jianra Talukdar, a researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav, এবং নীতি অনুসন্ধান সংস্থা, New Delhi, extend my warmest welcome to you all to IMPRI's Web Policy Talk. We're gathered today for a panel discussion on the rise of Bangladesh and its impact on India's Northeast. This discussion is being organized by IMPRI's Center for International Relations and Strategic Studies, CIRSS, as a part of IMPRI flagship discussion series, The State of International Affairs, the #Diplomacy Dialogue. I welcome all of you to this very special deliberation and thank you for tuning in. Now let me introduce the very esteemed panel for today's session. The chair for this session is Ambassador Riva Ganguly Dash. Ma'am has served as a former Secretary East at the Ministry of External Affairs and has also served as India's High Commissioner to Bangladesh and Consul General of India at New York. Ma'am was also India's ambassador to Romania, Albania, and Moldova. We are honored to have you amongst us, ma'am, and extend a very warm welcome.
Thank you.
Our distinguished panelists for the session are Professor Mustafizur Rahman. Sir is Distinguished Fellow at the Center for Policy Dialogue, Dhaka, Bangladesh. Apnake shagoto janai, sir. We are glad to have our second distinguished panelist for the session, Dr. Prabir, Professor at the Research and Information System for Developing Countries, RIS, New Delhi. A very warm welcome, sir. We look forward to learning from our very esteemed panel. And without any further ado, let us start the program. It is my privilege to invite the chair of the session, Ambassador Riva Ganguly Dash, to start the program with the chair's opening remarks and further to invite the panelists. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. And it's a great honor to chair this very interesting session and a very topical and on a very topical subject. Clearly, rise of Bangladesh is something on which I'm very curious to know more from Dr. Mustafizur Rahman. But a lot of data speaks for itself. And, in a very short one sentence, I can say that Bangladesh has been an absolutely amazing growth story. Its economic growth and its success is, one of resilience and triumph. Bangladesh has been steadily attracting foreign investments and has achieved consistent GDP growth. The focus largely has been on export-oriented industries. We have seen development of a robust manufacturing sector in Bangladesh. And Bangladesh has not only developed very well economically, but it has performed exceedingly well in the social sector. The country managed to achieve most of its Millennium Development Goals, MGDs, on time. The country has fulfilled the criteria to move on from least developing countries, LDC status to developing country status. And this is all, an example of the unprecedented economic growth and that we've seen. And in fact, Bangladesh's record in poverty reduction has been declared an inspiring model by the World Bank. Some of the key aspects that we see of the economic development are increased consumer spending, emerging young and workforce, high economic resilience, digital transformation, which is taking place at a very fast pace, increased government spending, rapid private sector investment. During the COVID period, when most countries were in negative, Bangladesh still managed to grow at 3.4%. And the other interesting thing that I found was that agriculture, which was contributing most of the to the GDP, which was about half during independence, is now only about 12%, whereas manufacturing, the contribution of manufacturing and industry has increased from 8% to 35%. So clearly these are very good signs. The share of women in workforce is 35%, a very impressive indicator, and this is behind the very good success of the garment sector. And as per, I really look forward to hearing more on this from Mustafizur Rahman. Now, coming to the Northeast, we all know that when partition occurred, the Northeast of India lost its, the whole area, which is now Bangladesh and Northeast, the undivided India, was an integrated economic entity. And with partition, the Northeast lost not only its modern connectivities, which is the road, railway, which the British had built, but also the centuries-old trade routes through inland waterway, the seaport. They lost all connectivity to a convenient and accessible seaport. Now, I think why we even find it important to discuss this subject today, and why it is meaningful, is because the bilateral relation has seen such a huge change in the last several years that we can and there's so much that has happened in the bilateral relations that there is this whole atmosphere, the whole enabling environment where Northeast can really benefit from the growth and development in its neighboring countries. And here I feel politically three things are extremely important. One is the, ever since Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina came to power, the action taken by Bangladesh on the insurgents, as the northeastern insurgents, that has, brought about a security situation in that area, which has been an enabling factor for further growth of the Northeast. The land boundary agreement between India and Bangladesh, which is such a huge success, which we sometimes tend to forget, is an actual demonstration of the political will that exists between our two countries. And here again, a big irritating issue and irritant in the bilateral relations were resolved through sheer political will. So these two things demonstrate the political will and create the enabling environment, which has allowed a lot of other developments to take place, especially in the economic field, which will enable the Northeast to benefit from the bilateral relationship. Now, if we take up connectivity between water, both inland waterways as well as the access to ports, there have been several developments. Of course, the inland waterway connectivity has existed since 1972, but new ports of call have been added, new routes have been added, and actually, greatly benefiting the state of Tripura. The port facilitation, we all know that now the trade between goods between rest of India and Northeast can move through the Mongla and Chattogram port. The commercial operations have started. It's a huge success story. Road and railway. In fact, I was looking at the figures of the lines of credit that India has given to Bangladesh, and it seems almost 12% of the LOCs have been used on road and railway projects. Because almost 1 billion has been actually dispersed out of the 10 billion development assistance, and out of 40 projects which have been identified, 14 are already completed. But I think some of the major impediments that are still there to really fully exploit the potential that exists are continuing inefficient connectivity, border crossings which are not particularly efficient because transshipment of goods has to take place, high tariffs, other non-tariff barriers, Then, harmonization of customs facilities, standardization of container size. In fact, even simple things like availability of electricity, internet, connectivity, having actual, a quarantine, for instance, a quarantine post available in a post where this is required. So altogether, I think there is still a lot of work which needs to be done. However, I would also like to point out that the what is happening in the sub-regional groupings, such as BIMSTEC and BBIN. This is extremely important, especially the BIN. Now, I think we should call it the MVA, is Motor Vehicles Agreement, and the protocol is between the Bangladesh, India, and Bhutan. And that, I think, is very important. So we can look forward to an improvement of intra-regional trade, which is actually 5% right now, to something much higher. We all know that the ASEAN interregional trade is 25%, and this will immensely benefit. There are n number of reports on this, that if connectivity improves, as harmonization takes place, then and trade facilitation improves, then it's a real win-win for both India and Bangladesh. So with these initial words, I would like to hand over the floor to Professor Mustafizur Rahman. We really look forward to hearing from you. We know that Bangladesh has had a little difficult time because of the Russia-Ukraine war, and the foreign exchange reserves have fallen, and it has impacted the whole world in terms of fuel and food security. So look forward to hearing from you. Over to you, Professor Mustafizur Rahman.
Thank you very much, Chair, Ambassador Riva Ganguly Das. Very good to see you. And as I was mentioning, conveying the best wishes to you from your many admirers in Dhaka. During your tenure as High Commissioner in Dhaka during 2019-20, we had a number of opportunities to meet with you and discuss issues of deepening and broadening Indo-Bangladesh relationships. So thank you very much. And thank you also for those initial remarks. I think you have covered a number of areas which we would like to focus. And I'm also very happy that Dr. Arjun Kumar and the IMPRI has taken this initiative to allow us to discuss some of the issues which have emerged as very important in the current context. And no less than Dr. Prabir is here to also take us through those issues. And I have always learned from Prabir. So together, maybe that we will be able to add some value to today's discussion. Now, Chair, you have rightly mentioned about Bangladesh's impressive growth, particularly over the past 1.5 decades. And it's now a $440 billion economy. In purchasing power, it's in fact a $1 trillion economy in purchasing power parity dollars. And the growth that we have seen in the recent past has been more or less steady and without volatility, excepting during the COVID period, as you have rightly mentioned, when GDP growth rate was 3.5%. Otherwise, it has been steadily, the average has been about 7%. So that has also allowed Bangladesh to, experience two graduations. One is in 2015, Bangladesh graduated from World Bank's low-income country category to lower middle-income country category. So that's the first graduation. And in 2021, Bangladesh has been slated for graduating out of the ADC group by November 2026. So that's the second graduation. So that also speaks about the success that we have experienced over the past years. Indeed, if you look at the early Bangladesh period, one of the very first books on Bangladesh was titled by two foreign writers, Joost Fallen and James Parkinson, Bangladesh, the test case for development. And they said that we wanted to write a test case for development, but since the country has been born with so much difficulty, we thought that if it can develop, any country can develop. So we titled it The Test Case for Development. So we have come a long way, as Ambassador, you have very rightly mentioned. But having said that, obviously the issue at hand today is whether our two countries, and obviously India has been the most important friend of Bangladesh during our war of liberation, whether the two countries, neighboring countries, are being able to take advantage of each other's comparative advantages. So that is the premise, I think, that we should discuss. And you have very rightly mentioned that the political boundaries did not necessarily follow the economic boundaries. So our task is to to ignore those political divisions, but how we can harness our advantages, take advantage of each other's proximity. We do have, world's fifth longest land border in the world. And with regard to your point about political and boundaries and economic boundaries, you see, one example that is very important is that the Chatok cement factory in Sylhet. So that started in the 1940s, and it was called the Assam Bengal cement factory. So we are still importing limestone from Meghalaya through a 26-kilometer conveyor line, and we are producing the cement and also exporting to Meghalaya and other northeastern states. So I think that is a very good example of really harnessing the advantages that we offer to each other. And but then we have also seen how, because of various reasons, this didn't deepen further. Even when Bangladesh became independent, even during post-independence period, we don't think that we have been able to really take advantage of the potentials that's there. We have seen a period where, for example, investment from Bangladesh was not allowed in Northeast, along with Pakistan of all other countries. But now, thankfully, it has been opened up, and some of our companies are investing there. But if we look at over the past 1.5 decades, a number of initiatives have been put in place. You are very right. And most recently, the use of Chittagong and Mongla port for transit facilities through Bangladesh to northeastern states of India. I think this is a major development. We did have the coastal shipping agreement, but finalizing this, fixing the fees and charges just a couple of months back. So that is, I think, a big opportunity for both the countries. It will reduce the cost from Western India to the Northeast through waterways bringing to Chittagong and Mongla, and then through the various routes taking to the Northeast. 8 routes have been identified from Chittagong and from Mongla, and it will, some will go to through Akhaura, Agartala, some will go through Tamabil, Dauki, some will go to Shaula, Sutarkandi, and some will go to Bibir Bajar and Srimantapur. So these routes will reduce the costs significantly. One issue in Bangladesh has been the fees and charges that are to be imposed, and these becomes an issue. But whenever these questions are asked to me, I say that it's not the fees and charges, but it's the business that will be, generated, to our agents, to our handlers at the ship, at the ports, to our transport agents who will carry it from Chittagong and Mongla to northeastern states. So that's where really the economic benefit is. But this is an issue. What is the charge and what is the fees, etc., etc. When I was a member of the Transit and Transport Committee set up by the government of Bangladesh in 2011, we thought that these will be discussed in the context of benefit sharing. Obviously, when there is a transport which is carried, cargo which is carried from western part to the Chicken Neck and Siliguri, etc., there is time involved, there is fuel involved, there is cost involved, human resources involved. And then if you go through Bangladesh, there is a lot of savings. So our idea was that if we can apportion the savings, that is the best way for the win-win. You also win and Bangladesh also win. Because this is a very practical problem in the sense that there are many issues within Bangladesh, and you have rightly mentioned that now there is no insurgency camps, which was a big irritant for many years. On the other hand, we have water issues pending with India. So how do we create the goodwill so that we can use that goodwill to resolve other issues as well? So it's also a lot of perception, I think, which is also there. Thankfully, I remember that when in 1990, we always used the word connectivity. Transit was a no-go word, but from those, whether to give, the discourse has now graduated to, under which conditions to give and what would be the win-win situation, etc., etc. So our Center for Policy Dialogue, Professor Rahman Soban, who is our guru and I think Probir's guru as well, I think a seminal contribution to this shift in the discourse from whether to how, that is a big contribution. But on the other hand, as I was mentioning, how do we then, advance it in a way which is, acceptable for all the countries? You have mentioned about BBIN. Very frustratingly, it was signed in 2015. The standard operating procedures were finalized in 2018. And now, after 8 years, 9 years, what do we have to show? So I am not saying that it is India or Bangladesh, or it is why Bhutan has opted out from it. But we decided that we will go, all the three countries, Bangladesh, India, and Nepal, we will go. And then Bhutan will join suitably. But then we don't see any benefit. Many of these connectivities could be operationally more beneficial if the BBIN could have been implemented. Still, as you mentioned, Ambassador, the harmonization issues, the standardization issues, we don't have single window at the border, and Prabir has worked a lot on those issues. Integrated customs, so interoperability of the systems. So we see that because of lack of those, sometimes we are not being able to take advantage of it. I'm not blaming India or it's also on our part some of the initiatives that we should have taken. For example, when I was a member of the Transport Connectivity Committee, one of our major routes was the waterway from India to Ashuganj, and then 35 kilometers to Agartala. That we calculated to be the best route. So you take advantage of both the waterway, the cost is low, and then from there only 35 kilometers. But then we found that, and that was agreed, 8-9 years back. And what has been the transport through that? Indian operators did take an interest in the initial period, but then the infrastructure was not there, the road was not there, and till now, absolutely nothing. 17 cargoes have made use of it, and one of the very first was the equipments for the Palatana, and in fact we are now getting advantage of this from the Palatana power point. We are importing 100 megawatt of electricity. But my point is that on our part also, some of the the speed with which the routes, the BBIN finalization, the routes for the BBIN and the transformation of the Ashuganj River Port into International River Port, customs facilities in Ashuganj, and then the four-way lane. Only now, the four-way lane to Agartala is being built. It's just a 35 kilometer, and it was under the first line of credit. So you have mentioned rightly about the the 3 lines of credit, 1 billion, 2 billion, and then 4.5 billion plus the 500 million defense. So it's 8 billion. So we see that only, as you very rightly mentioned, only 14 projects have been completed. So obviously, it's also the onus is also on Bangladesh. But on the other hand, I think there are some issues which affect also. For example, India has given when Prime Minister Hasina was in India, I think in 2019, India agreed that transit will be given to Nepal and Bhutan by using Indian territory and using Chittagong and Mongla port for third country and second country trade. We haven't seen any tangible development also in that front. So my hunch is that one thing affects another, and at the end of the day, we do end up with suboptimal, solutions. So, but on the other hand, as the title rightly mentions, the rise of Bangladesh is an opportunity. Both, I wouldn't say the opportunity for Northeast. I would say that it is an opportunity for both Northeast and Bangladesh. Bangladesh is seeking markets for investment. Bangladesh is seeking markets for its export. If the Northeast develops, and I have been arguing this for the last 30 years, if Northeast develops, and in Bangladesh, they say that if we give transit and connectivity, then we lose the captive market of the Northeast. This is a very popular argument in Bangladesh. And I say that when we didn't give transit and connectivity, how much did Northeast import from Bangladesh when it was a captive market? You can only import if you are developed, if you have the capacity to purchase. So if Northeast develops, then really in true sense, it becomes a captive market for Bangladesh, because it will then import more from Bangladesh, and Bangladesh will also use, have opportunity to invest over there and also import from the Northeast. So that type of argument, which is very popular, I think that we also should demystify what is that if we give transit and connectivity, we lose the captive market of Northeast. I think it is our duty as public, intellectuals and researchers to demystify those, because we have suffered along from those arguments. So since Bangladesh is now developing, but I think this particular moment is not very opportune. We are going through a lot of challenges. We have gone for IMF $4.7 billion loan. And yes, Russia-Ukraine war is one of the reasons, but not the reason. Anyhow, I would not go into that. But the issue is that Bangladesh has an impressive track record. We are hoping that it will once again go into the high growth mode very soon, once the current challenges are over. But then how we can make it win-win with the Northeast? I think that we are setting up the connectivity and the transit agreements which we have signed can result in win-win situation. I think that investment in Northeast from Bangladesh side could be an important factor in the development of Northeast, facilitating the connectivity between western part and eastern part could be an important opportunity for Bangladesh, in the sense that if the investments can be made in the Northeast by India in a cost-effective manner, it will generate the growth in the Northeast, and that will generate the demand, and a part of which Bangladesh exporters can also take advantage of. So this is one thing that I wanted to emphasize. I think that the power trade, which we are now having, and with the Northeast, that is a major important development in Bangladesh. We are looking for secured power. And obviously, Northeast is becoming a major source. Of course, the way that we do the contracts and the pricing, etc., will have to be made in a way which is justified and which is beneficial to both the countries. In fact, Bangladesh has also gone for digital, trade with Northeast, and that is also good for us. But I think that more intensive collaboration of Bangladesh with the Northeast will help Northeast to develop at a faster pace. We see from Indian plans, huge investments are planned in the Northeast, which is being done as we speak. But if this can be done in a cost-effective manner, then obviously the expected returns should be there. And one of the ways of doing the cost-effective development in Northeast is to take advantage of the connectivity through Bangladesh, and that's why the Ashugunj River Port and the Ashugunj to Agartala road construction, the rail constructions which are being envisaged, all these I think that are very important to give emphasis on this, because I see that and it's the onus is not only on Bangladesh but also some of the way that these LOC project negotiations are carried out, and there are a lot of snacks over there. And I just saw the other day that the $7.5 billion, because of the delays, another $1.75 billion is negotiated with India because the costs have gone up by this time. This is not the way really, so India also has to give more credit, and Bangladesh also loses in terms of the returns that we expected in the first place. So I think that both of us, we will have to look at this special relationship, historically developed relationship between our two countries, and from the point of view of raising the standard of living of our people. And if that be the case, then obviously I think that some of the irritants that I have mentioned, looking at it from a broader perspective, more enlightened perspective, becomes very important. So with those words, Chair, I will stop here, but I can come later on if there is any question. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Rahman. I think that was a very useful and a very, you've given a very broad picture, and you've raised some very important issues. One is, of course, at all levels, we see that it takes a lot of time to actually, reach our goals and objectives. I mean, from BBIN to various LOC projects that you mentioned. And I think that's primarily because of, there are so many issues with each LOC project. There's sometimes land acquisition issue. There's sometimes change in specifications midway through projects. Then there is, rules and regulations that we have where, tendering, and there is a certain benchmark which has to be met. So I think there are issues, and we are learning as we move with the project. With these projects, you have rightly mentioned about the hard and soft connectivity. I think Prabir has done a lot of work on this. I look forward to hearing from Professor Prabir Dey on, I've seen a lot of writing that he's done on the softer aspect of connectivity, which again require a lot of attention. And I think what you've rightly said is that it's a win-win for both Northeast and Bangladesh, that both develop, and to demystify some of the narratives which are really become very old, and which have no meaning in today's world. We know, I know what you mean when you said that there was a time when the word transit could not even be mentioned, because I've done a posting earlier in 1990, 2002. It was almost a taboo word. We could not even use it. But I think everybody sees the economic benefits of connectivity, which is really win-win for both the countries. And the stakeholders have to be involved, I think, much more proactively. The business communities have to be involved, and whatever initiatives are in the pipeline, governments have to work to hasten these. May I now move on to request Dr. Prabir Dey to give his presentation. The floor is yours, Dr. Dey.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for giving the floor. And also I thank IMPRI for organizing the webinar, and also including me as one of the speakers. It's a great learning experience, as always, to Professor Mustafizur and also Ambassador Riva Ganguly Das. And I'm enriched, and I have very little to add, actually. I mean, the overview presented by Ambassador Riva Ganguly Das, Madam, and Professor Mustafizur, sir. Really, I have nothing to add, but I think there are a few more points which I will mention here, particularly the Northeast and Bangladesh linkages. But for the sake of discussion, I prepared on request of the IMPRI a short PowerPoint. This is a very bad habit that we have. We have gained in, that it is difficult to come out with a very eloquent presentation without the PPT. So please allow me. I'm sure there will be some questions. So Jivan, can I use my PPT?
Yes, sir. I think so. You will have the option.
Okay. Sure. Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I mean, just it is, and Professor Mustafizur, Ambassador Riva, they have already discussed it quite extensively. Even then, if some young scholar, they would like to note down something, so I thought to give it kind of an presentation just to encourage the young minds. That's it, nothing there I can add when you listening Professor Mustafizur and Ambassador Riva Ganguly Das. Quickly to me, when I look at Bangladesh, it is in one of the fastest growing economies of the region, and Bangladesh obviously a very long, good track record all the time. From one of the poorest economies in 1971, they had already elevated to the first elevation to lower middle income. They're going to be a developing country member in 2026 onward. There are many challenges, and these are the challenges while being there. If you are reaching a summit, then staying there means a lot of hard work's needed. And I had to mention here that there is an Asian Conference study, which you can share to others. They looked at this relatively minutely, Bangladesh to continue for next 25 years from 2026 onward, given their growth, economic growth, what kind of challenges they have to face and how to navigate those while they are as a developing country. So those are addressed by the new study report, which is done by Salim Raihan and many others. So I just made it a reference. The point here, see, how it has happened, as Professor Mustafizur said, it's a basket case. Why? Because it has a demographic dividend, very sophisticated social sector progress, ready-made garment export, and of course resilient remittance inflows, and macroeconomic conditions are stable. That's what I've seen literature which are being available by IMF and many of our friends who are working on macroeconomic parts at work. But I'm not going to discuss macroeconomic challenges here. This is not the right place, or neither we have that kind of an ambit here. Now, Bangladesh offers many economic avenues. I want the avenues for Eastern, Northeastern India. And what are those? This I add this way. How? I think as a trade economist, Bangladesh, when the last Prime Minister visit to one of the success stories that India, as Bangladesh and Japan, they could make it in recent years, is that Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's visit to Tokyo, and we have seen many important outcomes, of which a study of SEPA, India, Bangladesh, Japan SEPA agreement has been, the joint study group initiated, and India, Japan, SEPA was already implemented. They are at the moment discussing each other to revise the agreement. After 10 years, either of the parties can call for a revision. That's what India, Japan SEPA, the partners are doing. I have no hesitation to add here that India is very happy with the SEPA that I have with Japan, because India has a deficit in current account, but with Japan, India has a gain surplus in the capital account. That's what visionaries like Rahman and others, Professor and many others, they are telling that only way the bilateral FTAs can sustain if there is a give and take or if there is a win-win. So here India, Japan is such case, but even there are issues on the trade front, which are primarily non-tariff barriers. And India and Bangladesh, they have completed the SEPA joint study group. Professor Salim, who is also attending here, he was one of the members of the joint study group. So what I've seen, that the three countries, once this negotiation is completed and they implement, and most likely 2025 could be a year, I guess, because 2026 Bangladesh comes to becoming a developing country. So they would like this SEPAs, both the Japan and India, to be done before that. So hopefully we have 2 more years to go and negotiation to be completed. This would help in many ways and offers many implications for them, including in different parts of India and also Bangladesh and in the neighborhood. Now, 421 billion 2023, the GDP, they expect to be 1 trillion by 2030. The nominal price, PPP terms, is a bigger, they're already 1 trillion in PPP terms, 1.5 trillion in PPP terms today, Bangladesh. India at the same moment is aiming for 10 trillion by 2030. And notice at the moment, 2 to 3% they contribute. So when it comes to Indian GDP, Northeast contribution is not that big. One reasons, I should not say the word reason. Several analyses indicate that one main cause for 2 to 3% is Bangladesh, coming out East Pakistan and India, the division that time. So they became a northeastern part, became from land linked to landlocked, and because of the transportation time and cost, etc., northeastern economy, they've fallen behind to others. So today, but now if we think that Bangladesh's rise, which is very closer to the northeast, right? This is an organically grown, very, very, near economies. So I'm sure that Bangladesh, when it moves to 1 trillion by 2030, it means a lot to the 8 northeastern states, 7 sisters, 1 brother, plus if you add West Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa. So it means a lot because the distance, and if those who are doing this gravity modeling, we look at a distance, it talks a lot. So distance between, these capitals, states, that's a lower distance compared to the, far away places. So in short, it means that rise of Bangladesh has a lot to offer to Northeast, and there is a causality. The Northeast rises itself will offer many things to Bangladesh. That's what Professor Mustafizur said. But this is not so easy task. There are many other things. There are many risks, etc., and I will come. But what is important for Northeast to follow, that is it Bangladesh? What is it they're doing? This kind of things. Until you move, until you travel there, it's difficult to understand what is happening there, And I have listed those because I've seen it by my own, and there are many other areas, which is the physical infrastructure or digital. There are in soft side, which Professor Mustafizur and Madam Chair also spoken about it. On the software side, Bangladesh and India, or Bangladesh and Japan, for example, they have been discussing each other, and there are very honest attempts by both of them. And rather, I said trilateral relations is coming up very fast in terms of, the customs officers. Japanese customs agencies are offering Bangladesh customs to go to Tokyo and Osaka and many other places to learn how, the Japan manages the port infrastructure and the trade facilitation. Similarly, India Civic has been, extending training and capacity building to Bangladesh as well. So what I see, that India and Bangladesh, their engagements are, which is very comprehensive. Even if there is any other word beyond comprehensive, that should be, double comprehensive, if I may say in that way. So Bangladesh is adding many of this, and these are having a very strong implication to northeastern states as well. And I will come a little closer of that plotting those in terms of in the maps, like the Matarbari Deep Sea project and the Chattogram Cox's Bazar corridor, or even Dhaka Chattogram corridors, several projects. And if you look at them, it has a very strong development in implications for Tripura state, Mizoram, Assam, eastern part of India, etc., etc. Because these are the developments none of those states are having. Similarly, Tripura, what they are adding up, this is having very strong implications for the eastern Bangladesh, districts like Kumilla, Brahmanbaria, Chattogram, Cox's Bazar, like that. Or what happening in Bengal is having in eastern part of Bangladesh as well, like that. Now, I skip this discussion in the Matarbari, but let's come to on the Tripura, because somehow the corridor or the gateway, when it is a landlocked, the economy are closed, the gateway is basically, we look at from Siliguri and all the to Guwahati and etc., etc. But now this is going to be changed, and that change is going to be sort of permanent because of opening up of access to the ports through Chattogram and SEMP, one of the reasons, and then allowing some other maritime infrastructure in Bangladesh for the northeastern states. There are issues which slowly, I think will be sorted out. So for that, Tripura's connectivity linkages with Bangladesh is very crucial for the northeast, because the gateway is going to be the Sabroom, Agartala, and then Silchar, Shillong, Imphal, if you come to Aizawl side, or then Guwahati, and this way it will move. So one is that on the IWT front, ma'am and Professor Mustafizur rightly said, but there is a beauty in IWT. PIWT almost has given birth of many new things, the cruise terminals, cruise facilities, new port of calls, cargo movement volume increased in the 10 years time from 1.43 million ton to 4 million ton. And many things happen in the IWT front, particularly in the last 10, 12 years. But there are three things I need to add. One is still places where we don't have terminal and cargo handling facilities, dredging requirement, restriction of third country trade. These three things is actually prohibiting what? The intra trade between northeastern region and the Bangladesh. So more we allow facilities like cargo handling in Asuganj, for example, or in the Brahmaputra, or somewhere in the region, that would help actually faster handling of goods. By the way, in this PIWTT also given a birth to this India-Bangladesh Coastal Shipping Agreement, and an offshoot of Coastal Shipping Agreement is basically that ACMP. But ACMP is if the goods between eastern part of India to northeastern part of India to Bangladesh, it doesn't talk about northeastern regions trade with a third country using the Chattogram or any upcoming port. Perhaps this is needed. Why? Because we are expecting Bangladesh FDI more and more in northeastern region, and as well as the Japan FDI coming will be in the northeastern part of India, and that exportable or importable from northeastern part, if they would like to have for any kind of an FDI, it is logical to route it through Matarbari or Chattogram or other ports, Mongla or somewhere else. So that is presently it is not there, and hopefully this will be discussed and will be added to that. We look forward to it. But Bangladesh gesture to India and northeastern parties, we heavily, respect it, but particularly personally me, because the transit, the word, which was a kind of thing, we have seen it 20 years back, and we have changed, completely. And here it is Bangladesh which has offered, the transshipment for the northeastern region out of his own, the gesture to the northeast. And I looked at literature, and there's so much relationships between Tripura and Bangladesh from the freedom fighting struggle 1971 onward. So this is a kind of an, I will say in a loose word, but don't talk about much. It's a kind of return gift that Bangladesh has offered to northeastern part of India. But I think ACMP is good, fine, but maybe third country trade, if it is allowed for northeastern goods, so it will be in heavy return for Matarbari development, as well as for trade with northeastern and Bangladesh as well. Let me come and conclude that what's the nearest the gateway port facility that is Sabroom is doing. Sabroom to Agartala distance, as you know, the Sabroom, the Chattogram was once the same geography before 1947. So Sabroom is what is it's adding up like Bangladesh. It is coming up with Asia's largest railway yard. Normally nowadays we don't see Asia's largest facility in India. It used to be once upon a time. Asia's largest dental college, Rafi Ahmed Dental College in Kolkata, Asia's largest, Asia's first Nobel laureate, Rabindranath Tagore, like that. So nowadays we don't see that kind of things, but this is happening in the Sabroom because Indian Railway is bringing up is Asia's largest railway yard, and there must be something in their mind. So land ports, container yard, SEZ, digital bandwidth, highway, International Buddhist University, all of them, hospitals. Just last week we had discussion in Delhi. There are interests of hospitals and then health centers, all in the Sabroom, because one is the availability of land and it's locational advantage looking at Chattogram and Cox's Bazar. So, and once the SEPA between India, Bangladesh, or Bangladesh, Japan is ready, I think Tripura and northeastern part of India, looking at this strategic, advantage, they're going to get FDI, and I'm sure this is going to be. It's just merely personal view. There will be a lot, FDI coming from Bangladesh as well as third country like a Japan and ASEAN as well. Okay, here I also need to add before I go and speak on the challenges. There are some issues which is like, which is I think to unlock the huge vast potential and to encourage the industrial value chains that we have been talking about. Access of ports that is Bangladesh has given. India has offered Bangladesh as a kind of a return gesture to join trilateral highway. Bangladesh 26 onward, one of the criteria they have to fulfill is that to go for alternate bilateral market access, alternate routes through FTAs, and those are ASEAN countries, obvious reasons, and getting hooked into the trilateral highway, which is getting ready. In the yesterday's conversation in Delhi, it indicates that this is physical layout have been done. What it's missing is the bridges, the 69 small bridges all across the trilateral highway, particularly India Myanmar side. Those needs to be constructed or revamped. The NHAI led reconstruction of 62 kilometers in the hill in the Myanmar. It's almost done, except a few things. But what is not done, the 69 bridges, for which I think government of India is very keen to complete it, and that's what the BIMSTEC business conclave which is going on in Calcutta at the moment. This is being discussed, and also the Ministry of External Affairs representative, he also made, and others as well. So Bangladesh joining in the trilateral highway, it's also helpful Bangladesh getting into the northeastern region as well as to the ASEAN country. But what is missing here is, if we'd like FDI from Bangladesh or FDI, Northeast going to the Bangladesh, there are restrictions from the trade point of view, which is Ambassador Riva and Professor Mustafizur. Others, they know it. that we haven't touched. There are port restrictions, there are etc. etc. There are anti-dumping duties and many things. So those need to be removed. After all, if we want both India and Bangladesh to look at is a kind of mutual development partner for Northeast, or Japan, Bangladesh going for the Northeast, then small, tiny, issues like, port restrictions or other trade restrictions need to be cartiled. Then FDI is another front. If there is if we need to have an FDI, then restrictions on FDI is not an automatic route. Maybe from the list, Bangladesh, maybe we remove, let other countries be there. And there is one also in a kind of a way for recommendations is each northeastern states, they have a multiple industrial services clusters. For example, Sikkim, it has a pharmaceutical cluster. Many of the top-notch Indian pharmaceutical companies supplying pharmaceutical to the Americans, and they have the US drug authorities approvals. So they have the factories in Rangpur. I request Professor Mustafizur and others who haven't visited, please visit Rangpur, which is the border between West Bengal and Sikkim. There are permissions required, by the way. It's not a free. But you see that there are almost 30 pharmaceutical clusters. So I can see the value chain linkages from pharmaceutical sector in Bangladesh. Bangladesh health sector is also very much, advanced what it used to be, and they would also Bangladesh pharmaceutical companies like Beximco, they have a global presence. So here I see kind of value chain linkage. Similarly, if you come to Assam, Assam next to Bangalore, Kolkata, Chennai, also Guwahati is coming as a health cluster. So I think Guwahati, Imphal, those places I see the educational services links, in a very casual way, I am mentioning it. But those corridors can only improve if we, if we bring here the connectivity. Presently, no flights. We expected that Agartala, Chattogram flights will be, will be started. Hopefully, it will be soon by Air India, Etihad. Similarly, from Chattogram or Dhaka to several places in Bangladesh and Northeast, that should be resumed. Those are small steps can help bring huge benefits to to the Northeast as well as Bangladesh. Now, some challenges I have already discussed, but in terms of Bangladesh, post 2026 trade diversification would be a big challenge. So, is there any way Bangladesh is certainly moving from labor intensive to capital intensive? Is any way Northeast is the place where we have a skilled resources? Can Northeast be also hooked into those change of trade diversification to sustain? Similarly, on the climate point of view, we know there's a rise in water level 2050, 2047 onward because of the climate issues. There would be a big threat to the sustainability of the livelihood, both in Northeast and Bangladesh. So can we do or think for some kind of a joint research, joint dialogue? Those are there's a challenge we can offer a way forward like that. Well, navigational issue, and navigational means that Kornofuli, as we know, that Kornofuli river is an origin is not in the sea. The fall is in the sea. The river is falling into the sea. It's an estuarian. It is an origin. Is in a water biosphere. Where is it? It is in Mizoram, and that biosphere somehow over time is getting dried. So that's why we see the huge siltation in the Kornofuli, and quite naturally the port. That's why that they need to shift it from Chattogram to. And very well they thought about Matarbari and etc. So if this navigational issues become very complicated, then the port itself will be hampered. That's what I'm going to do. So it's proper strategies. India is coming up with a big international transshipment terminal at Andaman Nicobar areas. it might be coming up or it may not be because of the environmental issues. But if that goes up, the place called Galathea Bay, if that goes into a place, then the port geography of these Bay of Bengal, including Kolkata, Haldia, and many, and this is going to be changed. So we need to understand this will actually pull down Bangladesh, graduation to meaningful graduation to the developing world. Here, I have written it in 1991, 2001, this 11 years, India's post-liberalization, India could not do much in terms of international trade because India never had, that kind of a port facility. But things have changed thereafter. So, and then there are security issues. I mean, BDR, BSF. There are lots of issues between them. There are both, hard security and non-traditional securities, both. So I think those need to be as well. We need to discuss. An economist charter cannot ignore a security. That's what I was told and convinced by the people in Delhi. So I have to say that these are very important. Global crisis issues, we know, and I skip it because of the lack of time. There are other areas, if we have a big plan, like the one Professor Mustafizur, Ambassador Riva Ganguly, many others have been talking about, Salim Raihan, Mizanur Rahman, and many others, I can keep on adding them. All, cannot work until political relation is there on small thing, which is between, between the races. So those are very important as well. So I stop, and if I may, just those who are the students here attending, kind of a takeaways, the professors that come at the end, they say after the lecture, here are the takeaways, please note down. So what I say, that the relation between Bangladesh and northeastern regions, great opportunities both way. Agree with Professor Mustafizur, Ambassador Riva, and others. And this relation is the way that we have evolved. It is an irreversible, and great thanks to our diplomatic forces who have been constantly working. First, High Commissioner, High Commissioner Subimal Dotto, and we have with us Ambassador Riva Ganguly Das, and I mean, lots of things out of it, which I cannot, discuss in this open forum, but diplomacy has played a very strong role in both ways. And there are, good development on the connectivity front, but digital, physical linkage, those which are the, complete on projects which is not yet completed. There are many, pluses yet to be completed, like, the trade facilitation. For I know that Bangladesh is coming up a single window. India has already installed a single window up and running for a couple of years. They should speak each other. That's what Professor Mustafizur said, interoperability. Second is, India has successfully introduced UPI, right? We go to we use it, the QR code based on the payment for the PQ. So also Bangladesh. But interoperability between them doesn't work. If we can make a payment, sits in Bangladesh using, the online mode, but payment through the gateways still not seamless. So that's what India-Singapore has done. India-Singapore model has a lots of things to India, Bangladesh, and BBIN countries as well. Some things which we have been talking about, and many others at RIS, at ASEAN conference, Datta, and many others they are talking about that. Let's do it in Northeast Bangladesh CEO forum. That's not there. Prime Minister Hasina requested. I remember, to our former Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh and current Prime Minister Modi, that she would like to have a summit with the chief ministers of the 7 northeastern states and West Bengal. Is it going to happen, or is it you leave it there because it's politically sensitive? So those small things will have a very long impact, like exchange of political leaders, business leaders. Those are important. We don't see much happening in the exchange fronts, by the way. Many they would like to come here. BIMSTEC Business Summit is going on in Kolkata. I'm not attending it, I was invited, but because of family reasons, I'm in Calcutta at the moment. I have to be in Calcutta today for the family reason. I could not go, but I seen a photograph. There are 25 business delegation high level they are visiting here. But how many high level business delegations going to Dhaka or Bangladesh? That's need to be, talked about. So I don't see those are coming very much, or there should be more and more. Think tank network, university connection, not happening, by the way. Dialogue between Tripura universities, northeastern universities and Bangladesh, there is no such forum. There should be. I think Indian Ministry of External Affairs, Indian High Commission should give some support to it. And small support. Professors, they don't need honorarium. They only need airfare to be taken care. They're very happy to give a best services. And Bangladesh is going to take over the BIMSTEC chair and is the lead country. And I think we are going to have, we're going to look at forward Bangladesh for leading the BIMSTEC. That would also having a very strong implications, development implications for Northeast as well. So I stop here to go for questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Dey. I think you've raised a lot of important issues. SEPA certainly will have a lot of impact. You've talked about trilateral partnerships. You've spoken about value chain linkages, I think, which is very important. And especially COVID has taught us how important it is to have resilient supply chains. The pharmaceutical sector is extremely important for cooperation because both the Northeast and India have, and Bangladesh have huge complementarities there. And the many and stakeholder dialogue, I think that's very, very key to whatever government does for its implementation, because I always say that government creates the enabling environment. At the end of the day, it's the businesses and private sector which has to actually implement and take it forward. And more dialogue amongst and with them is very important. So we don't have much time left now. I think we have about 20-25 minutes for question answers. Are there any questions? I don't see anything in the chat box. So will you please raise your hand if you have any question, then we can, and please mention whom the question is addressed to.
Or ma'am, because there are many viewers in the social media, if they have posed any questions there as well.
Yeah,
if IMPRI can share those.
If IMPRI can please help us with that. If there are questions there. Jian?
Ma'am, I'll just look for questions on the YouTube, but I just had two questions myself. And one is addressed to Mr. Rahman. Sir, even though Bangladesh has received a lot of international funds for developing its country, the resilience of its own people stand out. Do you think that the handing over of Padda River Bridge photo to David Malpass was a watershed moment for Bangladesh and its government?
Okay, no, thank you. The Padma River Bridge was, envisioned in 2010, and as you know, we initially the World Bank was to support it, but then there were some questions raised with regards to the integrity of the project, and so Bangladesh decided to go and build on its own. So this is, I think, very important in the sense that it has allowed us to also manage a big infrastructure project, and the footprint of that experience we will benefit in years to come. But having said that, I also should mention that the projected financing went from 10,000 crore taka to 34,000 crore taka. So because of the delay and etc. And the issues of good governance completing the projects on time that I have also discussed and Prabir also mentioned, those remain a major issue. Obviously, Padma Bridge and its management has given us an experience, but at the end of the day, whether it is foreign financed or locally financed, it is the taxpayers who will have to pay it. And the debt servicing lies with the taxpayers. But the problem arises when you have, cost overrun. Then the tolls have to be kept up, and it's for the consumers and the producers, their benefits and their cost-effective production is undermined. So that remains a major concern in Bangladesh. I also should mention that I don't know if you know that $200 million out of the $3.5 billion project cost that is ended up with, India has given a grant from the first LOC of $1,000 million, $1 billion. So $200 million has been given to by India to Bangladesh as a grant. Is actually $800 million. And because the projects were extended, another $65 million has been added. So India has also contributed to this. One of the reasons why so much money we have spent and the cost return, the economic return and financial return was that Padma Bridge and the rail link, which is being built, which is more costly than the Padma Bridge itself, and is financed 2/3 by China and 1/3 by Bangladesh. So together is about an $8 billion project, the bridge and the rail link, and the justification was also, and this is connected with today's discussion, is that the Padma bridge will be an economic corridor through sub-regional cooperation. You see, by deepening sub-regional cooperation with the neighboring states of India, we generate the cargo, which then can make this investment viable. So from that perspective also, deepening sub-regional cooperation with India and servicing the transport cargo from West India to East India and taking it to Mongla port and then to northeast states. All these are becoming very important for the viability of these, this rail and road $8 billion investment that we are going for. So from that perspective also, so what we have discussed today becomes so important because the sunk cost is there. And if we have done A, but don't do B and C, then obviously the whole justification of A is not there, So from that perspective, I think your question is very important. Thank you for raising it.
And the other question.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Professor Rahman. Yeah.
And the other question, ma'am, is addressed to both you and Dr. Prabir, that while there is a lot of talks at the level of diplomats and at the level of economists about, building road bridges and transportation and trade connectivity between the two countries, in today's India, there is an internal dogma related to the people of Bangladesh in that sense that there is a politics of hate that is being spread. So in consideration of illegal immigrants, etc. So do you think that lack of trust deficit between population to population is a cause of concern, or is that not a deterrent in the relations?
Well, if I may have the first word on it, and then I'll ask Prabir to speak. Professor Mustafizur Rahman also spoke about issue of narrative and perception. you can't ignore the fact there is a perception issue, perception problem here. But the fact also remains that, it's not something which is one solid thing, which, you can say that this is the perception of Bangladesh and this is the perception of India. In my experience, the perception varies a lot from people's experience. And I have seen that the perception of young people of Bangladesh is very different from people of the older generation. This is a generation which has not seen, they've been born in a, relatively prosperous Bangladesh. They've not seen the liberation war. They see economic opportunities with India. And in the case of India-Bangladesh relations, being such close neighbors and having the history that we have seen, there are always, elements which will try to give a twist to something where there is no twist to be seen. So perception and narrative building are two very important aspects. And now that we live in a world of social media, this gets amplified. So one odd, voice, which may not be the mainstream voice, multiplies, and then it appears that this is the mainstream voice. So, here what we can do to counter this is to have more and more people to people connect. I mean, look at what connects us. The biggest connection I feel as a Bengali is the language connect, which we really don't use as much as we can. The connection of theater, the connection of shared history. We sing the same songs, we read the same poetry, we read the same books, a large part of India and Bangladesh. But that particular part of the story, somehow, it's not, it doesn't happen as much as it should happen. So I think perception, I wouldn't use the word perception management in that sense, or narrative management, because that gives the impression that, you are sitting and scheming and preparing something. I think we should just let people freely mix with each other and see for themselves the economic benefits of this relationship, which has really grown, which I think as Indians and Bangladeshis, we can really be proud of. We can give it as an example into the world of good neighborly relationship. I mean, all over the world, countries talk about, rule of law and, UNCLOS and this and that. India and Bangladesh don't just talk about it. It's not lip service. We've actually implemented it. The arbitration award was accepted as it is, land boundary agreement. How many countries have been able to show the political will to do that? So there is, I think there is a lot more dialogue, lot more talking to each other, which is needed, and not more people to people contact and movement between the two countries. And it's happening. I'm glad to say that it's happening. Over to you, Prabir, whatever you want.
No,
to add.
I have nothing to add, ma'am. Absolutely fine. I have nothing to add. So, yeah, absolutely fine. I have nothing to add.
Professor Rahman, even the question was to me and
Yeah, no, I think that Jan has mentioned about a very important issue with regard to trust deficit. And obviously when in Bangladesh we see that some of the groups they try to incite hate against immigrants and declare them that they should be pushed back to Bangladesh, and registration, etc., etc. These do really, leave their footprints in the minds of the people. And then the progress that is being made in other areas, that becomes, that becomes hostage to that. So I think you are very right. The word is not perception management. I think the word is trust building. And how do you do that? I think geography matters. Our neighborly relations matter. And what happens in one country obviously has its repercussions in other countries. Thankfully, in Bangladesh, we do have a culture of not being very much affected by what is happening. which may undermine the trust deficit, and I am mentioning with regard to the registration and etc. Initiatives being taken. But on the other hand, I think that we should be very sensitive to what we do, and it has repercussions on both sides of the border. So I will leave it at that. But I think that I have been able to, transmit the sentiment, because what I see that many years of very painstaking, work that we have done, sometimes it's just in one moment is undermined. So we have to be, very careful with regard to that. Prabir mentioned one issue, I think, which is very important. For example, he mentioned about, for example, in the trade, anti-dumping duty. So this is also another issue which is now going on. Anti-dumping duty on jute exports, ranging from $53 to $153 per ton. So I think that these are also issues which needs to be addressed. I remember that when the anti-dumping duty, Prabir, you remember, on the Rohim Afroz dry cell battery, it was there for 5 years, and then when Bangladesh went to the WTO dispute settlement body, and it was withdrawn. But by that time, the market was gone. So I think that there are also issues which we need to be, there may be concern, but I think there should be avenues where we can resolve it before taking action. So that would be my supplement to what you mentioned about trust deficit. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. Prabir. We will just get along with the session with a vote of thanks. So thank you to all the panelists.
Mr. Das has logged out. I'll just check with her. Meanwhile, Professor Day, do you have anything to add?
No, I on the kind of suggestion to you and the IMPRI team. Maybe the outcome of today's conversation, if you can share through a policy brief or commentary, for wider circulation. That's what just I think, many of our this conversation, should be documented and should be shared with a larger audience. So if you can help us, so that's will be my only, kind of a request to you and others in there. Yeah.
Sure. We will certainly do that. We'll come out with the event report for all our events.
I endorse the idea. Yes, endorse the idea. Sorry.
So we had planned for a closing remarks by Mr. Das, but since he's not here, shall we proceed with the vote of thanks, or if you have anything to add?
Can you?
No, thank you. Nothing from my side.
Yeah.
And just check. Ma'am was here. She just logged out. Okay. In that case, Jian, why not you go forward? Sure.
Okay. Thank you to all the panelists. To say this discussion was enlightening would be an understatement. We learned a lot today about how Bangladesh has become an international case for development, and also how India and Bangladesh are connected to each other through various trade and transport agreements. I hope we have learned a lot more on what the two countries can do to further reap benefits from each other's proximity. And as we come to the end of this enriching discussion, I, Jian, would like to propose the formal vote of thanks on behalf of IMPRI, Center for International Relations and Strategic Studies, CIRSS. We are grateful to our chair, Ambassador Riva Ganguly Dash, and our esteemed panelists, Professor Mustafizur Rahman and Dr. Prabir, for taking part in this discussion and enlightening us. I would also like to thank all of you attending today, either on Zoom or through YouTube. We thank all of our participants who have raised some questions and actively participated in today's Web Policy Talk session. We are also grateful to you if you are watching us later on our YouTube channel or listening to us via podcast or reading our publications. You may also find such similar discussions and thematic events under IMPRI Web Policy Talk series, the State of International Affairs, #Diplomacy Dialogue over our YouTube channel playlist. We hope you continue to join us in the near future for our IMPRI Web Policy Talks and Web Policy Learning. Wishing you a good evening. Thank you. Dhanyavad.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Mustafizur, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.